All right, so let's talk Warrior. Cinemax just dropped Warrior last night. I've seen it twice so far. So we're going to get into this. And if you're new here, what you should know is that we love action adventure on this channel. We also love fantasy sci-fi. It is the bulk of what we cover on this channel. So if that is your thing, make sure that you join the best community here on YouTube and hit that subscribe button. So let's talk Warrior. Now, for those of us who are Into the Badlands fans, and by the way, if you're new here, there's a show called Into the Badlands. We're huge fans of that. I am going to be making some comparisons between ITB and Warrior, but that said, I do want to stress these are not the same show, you guys. It is not the same show. I don't think it's trying to be the same show, but there are some interesting comparisons to make, and I do want to make them because I want your feedback and opinion on them. So it's really interesting, right, when we see a show like this because, number one, it's on Cinemax, and it does have, by and large, an Asian cast, a complete Asian cast, again, which is nice to see some diversity, some different looks and things like that for American television and international television as well. So I think what we'll do is we'll get into the show, you guys. It'll be a little bit spoilery, not too much, because I know that there's some of you guys that are still trying to figure out how you're going to see the show, and I don't want to mess everything up because I know that you also want to be part of the conversation. So if we really want to get spoiler filled, guys, let's do that in the comments where folks do not have to read them if they don't want more information than what they get here. So let's get started. Let's start with who stars in the show. Now the show stars Jason Tobin, who plays a character named Young June in the show, Andrew Koji, who plays a character named Ah Sahm in the show, and Olivia Cheng, who plays a character named Ah Toy in the show. Now the show is based on the writing of Bruce Lee, and you may or may not know this story. From what I understand, Bruce Lee did pitch the whole idea behind the premise of this show to some producers when he was still alive, and then lo and behold, a while after that, a show named Kung Fu starring David Carradine came out. But from what I understand, this is more akin to the type of show that Bruce Lee wanted to do. Let's give a brief overview of the show, and then we'll get into my thoughts about the show, and then we'll talk about the comparisons between this show and ITB. Ah Sahm is coming to America. The name of this episode is Itchy Onion, and he is getting off the boat. There he has an encounter with some port authorities, and he gets into a fight with all three of them, and basically he beats all of them up. Now this is cool because it gives you an idea of who he is as a fighter and a little bit of an idea of what his personality is like, but we do get to see that Bruce Lee style of fighting. So he definitely is the representation of the Bruce Lee character in this work. Now it's important, you guys, for you to understand, this is not a docudrama. This is not trying to compare parts of Bruce Lee's life. This is a martial arts drama. It is not a docudrama. But we do know that this is pretty much someone who is established as the Bruce Lee character in the show. And we can see it all throughout this first episode, especially with the different fighting styles, the different characteristics, with some things that are classically Bruce Lee. So you know full well who this character is supposed to be patterned after in this show. So as the show moves on, because of his fighting prowess, he gets connected with a sect of Tong in the show. And the Tong are the different Chinese groups that are basically running Chinatown in the 1800s within San Francisco, and he becomes a hatchet man for them, basically an enforcer for that group. We start to see his storyline dissect with a whole bunch of different storylines in the show. It intersects with the government who is ruling at that time, and it looks like the presiding folks that are ruling there are the Irish. We get to see how their connection with Chinatown is played out through his storyline, and then we also get to see what's happening with some of the people within Chinatown and some of their motivations for being there as well, and how that also intersects with the larger community around them, including the government that's governing at that time. So that's just kind of a synopsis of what happens in this story. So let's talk about some of the different elements here. First, let's talk about the cinematography. It looks amazing. They did a really good job of creating 1800 San Francisco, and this is all set design, you guys. Obviously there is no 1800 San Francisco, so all of this is set design, and it's done so well. I mean, from the little details of what they've done to create this show to the broader scope of giving us the feel of 1800 San Francisco is really impressive, I have to say. And visually the show is beautiful. At times it's a bit dark, and that bothers me a little bit, and when I say that, I'm not talking about tone, I'm talking about physically. It's a bit dark. The show does kind of have a dark theme or a dark kind of tone about it, and visually it looks that way at times, and it's a little bit too dark. It's a little bit frustrating to me to kind of really try and look and see what's going on. But cinematically, I think it's great. The way it's shot is amazing. I think the use of light, the use of colors, the costume design, all of that stuff is very well done in establishing where we are and this really being a timepiece of a show that we're getting into. I also think that the performances in this are really good. And it's nice because we do get to see some folks that we don't normally see, or some actors and actresses that I'm not familiar with. And I always love expanding our scope of people that we know that are really good actors, especially when these folks are international actors, because it broadens the appeal of the things that we like to watch. Let's talk about the fight cinematography now. So I enjoyed the fight cinematography. I think it's well executed. I think it's well shot. I love the fact that we do get long takes and we don't have a whole bunch of tricky camera angles kind of trying to hide the fact that some folks can't pull off the moves. I loved all of that. I love also how they film the action just in general. Now, I do want to stop and say that it is very graphic, and yes, probably even more graphic than ITB, so that's something that you want to watch out for. If you're not used to that or that type of thing does bother you, please be aware of that because it's pretty graphic. I was like, ooh. So when I saw some of the things in there, but I think that the way that they shoot the fight choreo here is well executed. Now, I also want to make a comparison here between the fight choreography in Warrior and what we see in ITB. Now, and if you're an ITB fan, please comment on this because I would love to know your thoughts on this, disagree or agree with me. What I liked about it was the way that it was shot. Now, is it as dynamic as Into the Badlands? No. I would not say the fight choreography is not even close to being as dynamic as Into the Badlands. But let me tell you why I say that. And here's where I want your feedback. The reason for that is the type of fight choreography that we see here is fairly basic when it comes even to martial arts execution. It is not as rhythmic or, oh man, what's the word I want? Or as beautifully fluid. Those two words got to go together, too. Beautifully fluid as what we see in ITB. And the reason for that is what we see in ITB by and large has a heavy kind of classic Kung Fu execution. So we do see a lot more flowing movements. We do see a lot more kind of intricate strikes and blocks. We do see a lot more things that mimic kind of animal forms of fighting in ITB, which gives it a very, very unique visual appeal on screen. It's one of the things that really sets the show apart when we're talking about fight execution. You don't see that in Warrior, but here's where I want to bring that point in. The Warrior is not trying to be ITB, or at least from my perspective, it's not trying to be ITB. You do see a lot more basic of martial arts execution, and it's not as fluid and kind of cinematically dynamic as what we see in ITB, but it's really good fight execution. Now, if we jump to the story, I think it's really well written. I think, again, the performances are really good in this, and it's really interesting because there's a lot of material to work with here. I mean, we have what's going on in Chinatown with the battles going on between the tongues. We have what's going on with the government, and then just a larger story with what's happening in the 1800s, and we have a lot of different things going on here with what's happening racially with all the different groups of people that are all within this certain point in time in San Francisco. So there's a lot of material to work with in this show. So I think that the writing here is good. I think that the acting here is good. And I think that there's a lot of different directions we can move in the show. So the potential for longevity of the show, I think, is there. I do want to bring this point to you as well because this show is not for kids. Definitely not for kids. I would say 18 and up. You're going to get the disclaimer when the show starts because there is a lot of graphic sexual content in this show, which is unfortunate to me. That bothers me. Now, this is my personal opinion. I don't need to see it within my shows. I know they say sex sells and all. Give me good writing, give me good action, give me good fight choreo, all of that, and I'm good. Now, let's transition, you guys. Is this show, this is all about personal opinion, by the way, as good as ITB? No. I would say no. I also want to say in fairness, because people are going to say it's not ITB and it's not fair for you to compare it. This is just a personal comparison. So if you guys, if we differ with this, then again, let's take it to the comments and let's get into it. No, it's not. I will tell you what's interesting. This show is interesting because it really highlights the uniqueness of a show like Into the Badlands. And it reminds me when I was interviewing Daniel Wu and we had a conversation. And Daniel Wu said something that I thought was really interesting. And he said, as a matter of fact, I will link that up right here. Or is it on that side? I think it comes up on that side. That interview, so you guys can check it out. It's long, but it's worth the listen to. It's something very interesting that he said. He said that he feels like, in some sense, ITB may have been a bit of a forerunner that was before its time. kind of something that lays the groundwork for maybe for shows to come and build on, so that we do kind of start to see some of the elements and start to see some of the things that we see in ITB in other shows, and we get to see a different type of action adventure show on TV than we've seen before. I don't think there's anything that can replace ITB, and Warrior doesn't do it either. Now, Warrior is good from what I've seen, but what ITB does, I've said this before, but I want you to really think about my words here. What ITB does is it finds a way to take drama, unprecedented martial arts action, very interesting character dev or character development, and wrap that within a larger world of intrigue set upon the dystopian backdrop. And the thing about it is, when you look at it, it does it so well. It's almost like the perfect storm. Everything seems so perfectly balanced. And it's not just that the fight execution is amazing. Yes, that blows you away, but you also are intrigued by the characters. When you think about the Widow, you love the Widow. When you think about Baji, it does a good job of saying, man, that guy is so funny, but there's still something interesting about him, something that we're not quite getting all of. So it does a great job of developing all of these very interesting characters in a way that pulls you through the story that's outside of just the martial arts execution. That's what ITB does uniquely, and I don't see any show being able to duplicate that. Now, as I said, Warrior has some really interesting elements in it, and I think it's probably going to be a good show. For me, will it satiate my ITB fix? No, it won't. At least at this point. I don't know what the rest of the episodes will be, but at least at this point, that's just where I am with that. So those are kind of my thoughts as it relates to Into the Badlands. I do like Into the Badlands a little bit better also because the characters are a lot more colorful. Now, in fairness, I've only seen one episode of Warrior, so maybe things will develop and we will change and we will get characters that might be a little bit more lively. But I think that they will always be different than ITB because the backdrop of the story is different in Warrior than it is in Into the Badlands. Everything is different. The structure of the story is different. All of it's different. All the different elements are different as well, unless things change in Warrior and we get some elements that we didn't see coming, and I don't think we'll get kind of like mystical elements in Warrior because it's a different type of show. If you're new here, I hope you enjoyed yourself. Listen, if you're new here, when I tell you this is the best community on YouTube, I mean that wholeheartedly. They are amazing. So thank you so much for stopping by. Please join the community as we are trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year and expand and grow the community. But honestly, they're awesome. You'll love your time here. Guys, thank you. As always, make sure that if you like this, give it a like. Make sure that you share it. And if you want to dig into the comments where we can get as spoilery as we need to, then let's go there. I'll see you guys there in a minute, and I will see you on the next video. Don't forget to check out the watchables right here. All right, guys. Peace.